Away, alone, alast, aloved, along the river run, past even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious ficus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. This sentence bookends James Joyce's legendarily opaque novel Finnegan's Wake, with the first page starting in the middle of the sentence on the word river run. Within it, we already have numerous connections to One Piece and how the names of certain things in One Piece are similar. Joyce is an author whose carefully chosen language can completely change the meaning of a sentence based on how a single word is read. To put it briefly, it appears that James Joyce's work, especially Finnegan's Wake, serves as one of, if not the strongest core inspiration and thematic motif behind One Piece. If you've read One Piece theories before, then you may already know this, but piecing together aspects of One Piece and Joyce's work relies on making many tenuous connections that are only strengthened when you see a pattern between other seemingly tenuous connections. Many points I make in this video I'm confident on, but many others are about trying to make as many of those loose connections as possible, stepping back and looking at the larger picture to see if they really mean anything. Also, this is a subject that takes a bit of background explanation, so bear with me for a moment while we discuss how this author born on the Emerald Isle has influenced the best-selling manga author of all time. James Joyce was an Irish writer active in the early 20th century. The subject of Ireland and its colonial subjugation to Britain were major themes of his, and he focused his writing especially on the city of Dublin. Although he was almost always writing about Ireland, he left the country and only visited a few times afterwards, feeling out of place in the ideologically conservative island. As already mentioned, his writing style is famously cryptic, with key points turning on the meaning of a word. In one of my English courses in college, my professor spent half a class just on the first sentence of a short story from his book Dubliners, titled The Dead. Lily, the caretaker's daughter, was literally run off her feet. Within this seemingly simple statement lies a myriad of possibilities. What is the significance of the name Lily? Why is she being described as the caretaker's daughter? Is she literally being run off her feet? Does the fact that the word literally contains Lily mean anything? Why do we even begin the story with Lily when she barely appears throughout the rest of it? Why doesn't she appear throughout the rest of it? What connection is there to her being the caretaker's daughter and the title of the story being The Dead? The endless alternative views lurking beneath a simple exterior are a staple of Joyce's, and is something Oda employs as well, such as how we just learned about Raftel and Laugh-Tale, or how Gold Roger is actually Goldie Roger. Joyce has four main works we should keep in mind during this video. There's Dubliners, a collection of short stories set in Dublin, the longest being the aforementioned The Dead. There's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, a novel about a pseudo-Joyce as a boy and young adult. Ulysses is based on the Odyssey by Homer but with a twist. The entire story takes place in Dublin in a single day, with the journey of two characters, Stephen Dedalus, who's the same protagonist from Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and Leopold Bloom, a man one generation older than Stephen, making up the bulk of the adventure. It takes sections from the original Odyssey and transposes them into Dublin life. Finnegan's Wake is the final and most cryptic of all of Joyce's work, and whereas Ulysses frequently delves into stream of consciousness, Finnegan's Wake is almost entirely stream of consciousness, often using made-up words that sound similar to English words, or incorporating words from dozens of languages. In a sense, it is a grand story of the world, but it's also based on the folk tune Finnegan's Wake, where a man named Finnegan is resurrected at his wake to have one last drink. Some works, such as Don Quixote, are also important in Joyce's own work, so it can be difficult to delineate what influence comes from where. I think this is all part of the mystery, and it's part of what makes One Piece so intriguing. Perhaps the most obvious parallel between One Piece and Joyce's body of writing is the fact that Ulysses and One Piece both draw heavy inspiration from the Odyssey. One Piece features a more literal island-to-island journey than Ulysses, but to find the real connections we need to really analyze the themes and character dynamics within One Piece. In Ulysses, Stephen Dedalus, an educated and literary young man bearing similarities to, but not being a carbon copy of Joyce, is in search of a father figure, largely rejecting his own. Leopold Bloom, a more down-to-earth and ordinary man, is in search of a son. This is heavily reminiscent of the relationship between Whitebeard and his crew, as well as every other character in One Piece who finds family in people that aren't blood relatives. Bloom shares a few attributes with Luffy. They both can be empathetic, both are obsessed with meat, and neither are what you would call intelligent in an academic sense, though they show intelligence in other ways, like how Luffy can have an innate understanding of someone's character sometimes, or how Bloom is always thinking about the things he comes across. In some respects, Steven, like Luffy and the rest of the D-Clan, oppose God. In Chapter 2 of Ulysses, Steven is working as a school teacher and the schoolmaster DZ, who is as punchable as any celestial dragon, says, "The ways of the Creator are not our ways. All human history moves towards one great goal, the manifestation of God." He says this because he supports British imperialism and rationalizes it by saying essentially, "Hey, if it's so bad, why does God allow it?" To which Steven jerks his thumb towards the window, saying, "That is God, a shout in the street." Essentially blasphemy. Steven is deathly afraid of water, and devil fruit users are weak to it. This was the first thing I noticed that really made me start considering how much inspiration Oda may have taken from Joyce. There's much more to be said about One Piece and Ulysses, and we'll circle back to this later, but I think some of the clearest parallels are, ironically, in Joyce's most difficult book. Finnegan's Wake is a complex work written in pseudo-English, but it's based on an upbeat folk song involving death and drinking, which sounds an awful lot like Binks's Brew. The title Finnegan's Wake is a play on words because Finn means end, again sounds like again, and wake could mean waking from the dead or resurrecting. We see this theme of returning or resurrecting repeated throughout One Piece. How many times has Luffy essentially died only to come back again? You could view Inherited Will as another form of resurrection as well. Gekko Moria resurrects the dead, and Eneru the Christ figure resurrects himself when his heart stops. If the Ope Ope no Mi is capable of resurrecting the dead, or near dead, then I would be very surprised if that ability of the fruit never gets used, especially near the final battle of One Piece. That being said, it's unclear whether it can actually do that, or merely stop someone from aging. Luffy has taken a lot of damage, and has had his life shortened several times, such as from Magellan's poison and Ivankov's hormone boost. I wouldn't be surprised if he does die at the end of One Piece, paralleling Gold Roger, but if he lives, I think he will at least have some sort of resurrection. The very first sentence of Finnegan's Wake is about recirculation, which could also be viewed as resurrection. I think the point Joyce is making is that history, and life itself, is an endless cycle. The Grand Line flows across the planet, endlessly recirculating, though I suppose you could view the Red Line and Marie Joie as interrupting this cycle. Vira cards also allow someone to return to the owner. Vanderdecken's Devil Fruit can be viewed as a thrown object returning to the person he's touched. Brook wants to return to Laboon. Poseidon is inherited on a cyclical basis. Sulong forms are according to the moon cycle, and so on. A common thing Oda seems to do with names is to use an amalgamation of historical pirate names, but also have them be related in some way to Joyce. I think we need to look a little deeper than just the fact that a character shares a name with a historical pirate, because that's really only a surface level reading of the character. Although Finnegan's Wake is difficult to read, I recommend at least checking out the first and last few pages because of the sheer number of connections to One Piece. If you use the version finwake.com, there are a lot of annotations, which is what I'm basing a few of these on. Luffy is of course the protagonist of One Piece, and the name of the river that flows through Dublin is called the River Liffey. The river is personified in Finnegan's Wake as a character known as Annalivia Pluribel, a person with red hair who for most of the book is talked about through other characters, just like Shanks. Pluribel also sounds like Bellemere and Bellamy a bit. Take a look at this picture of Joyce. It reminds me a lot of Luffy's hat, especially if you combined it with Tom Sawyer's straw hat. There's a character, Sir Tristram Violer de Amor, a nobleman of love who is from the north, which sounds to me like Sanji, who's from the North Blue. There are allusions to fire, which could represent Ace, water for Jinbei or Trafalgar D. Water Law, oranges for Nami, the color green for Zoro, and venison for Chopper and Carrot. The word Kid appears, who according to the annotated version I used, is affiliated with the biblical Jacob, who has red hair, and his brother Esau. Jacob stole his father's blessing from his older brother, and one explanation I read said that this represents the means justifying the ends, in the Bible's case for the love of God, and in One Piece, Kid is very much someone who would believe the ends justify the means, being one of the more violent supernova we've seen. Esau plus Kid could equal Eustace Kid. Tom Sawyer is mentioned on the first page of Finnegan's Wake, drawing comparisons to Luffy's design and attitude. There's electricity and thunder for Enel, sea hags possibly related to sea kings, Amazia for Amazon, plus Lily is the first word in the dead. More references to the river Liffey, such as Lif and Livy, connecting to Luffy again. The first sentence contains alasta, which sounds like alabasta. There's also along or arlong. Elsewhere there's Sanji. Thousand Thee could be related to Thousand Sunny. Robin's mother's name, Nico Olivia, sounds a bit like Anna Olivia, Pluribel. Ginny's in the Bonnie could be Jewelry Bonnie. Sanglorians or Shandorians. Nico rhymes with Vico, one of the main inspirations behind Finnegan's Wake, especially its themes of recirculation. There is the line, and Robin's in crew so, meaning Robinson Crusoe, but also Robin's in the crew. Commodius Vicus sounds like Crocus, also Crow Patrick, a holy mountain in Ireland, and of course Crocus lives near Reverse Mountain. There's an even better explanation for his name that we'll cover in a bit. Parnell was a leader of Irish independence. His name sounds like Pell. Pell is also directly quoted in Finnegan's Wake, and it's worth noting that Parnell in Finnegan's Wake is described as someone who could resurrect like Pell does. Sol is mentioned on the same page as the word giants. Rocks is mentioned on the first page of Finnegan's Wake, and Wandering Rocks is also a chapter in Ulysses. Vanderdecken and the Flying Dutchman are mentioned in Finnegan's Wake as well. The phrase black-bearded Iscariot appears in Ulysses as a reference to Judas Iscariot, the person who betrayed Jesus. Blackbeard betrayed Bonnet for a pardon in real life also. Bugly Captain could potentially be connected to Captain Buggy. Joy Boy is literally mentioned directly. Balaclay and Bartholomew are next to each other. Clay is also the name of a story in the dead. Ben Beckman. Could it be Ben D. Beckman? Bend of Bay has the same alliteration, BB. Lucky Roo found the gum gum fruit, and is obsessed with meat, like Luffy and Bloom. I think that he will be very important in some way because of this, but I'm not sure how yet. Brook is just another name for a river, and last but not least, I think the origin of Shanks' name may be in Finnegan's Wake. Located in the novel's depths, we see the word, with the first letter capitalized, Red Shanks. In addition to the Anna Olivia Pluribel and River Liffey connection mentioned earlier, this could be related. A Redshank was a Scottish mercenary, commonly hired by Irish armies against the English. This would make some thematic sense for One Piece, with the world government bearing similarities to the English. There was some Norse settlement in Scotland, so that may be related as well. There's also other mentions of the word Shanks, with another being capitalized too. In Finnegan's Wake, there's a character known as the Prank Queen, believed to be based on the 16th century Irish pirate Grace O'Malley. She was known for being in charge of her family and being a capable leader in a patriarchal era. Some legends state that she arrived at Howth Castle, but was refused entry because the family was at dinner, and through some kidnapping eventually forced the family to agree that no guest would be refused a place at the dinner table. The last part is similar to Sanji's moral code, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Big Mom is both obsessed with food and shares an arc with Sanji. This could also be related to the Irish famine, an important theme both in Joyce's work and in the work of many other Irish authors. Sanji takes the positive influence from Grace O'Malley, with his hospitality involving food, while Big Mom inherits the negative, being domineering over her family and hoarding food for herself. It's really incredible to me the way Oda is able to transmit the elements of Finnegan's Wake in such an original way, while also drawing inspiration from other places at the same time. Part of the Wake, and Joyce in general, is all about drawing in as many inspirations as possible, so even unrelated elements may still technically be related to Joyce. All of what we have covered so far is impressive enough, but it is only the beginning. The world of One Piece is a world where an oppressive naval superpower controls much of the world and looks down upon all others as inferior. Britain's greatest military strength was of course their navy, which they used to rule over many countries, one of them being Ireland, a country that has suffered immensely at the hands of the British, from the destruction of their language to the starvation and essentially forced immigration of millions. This is a common theme in both Joyce's and Oda's writing. The anti-colonial themes found in One Piece, which go far beyond some tepid racism is bad statement, are perfectly fitting for someone inspired by Joyce. Thriller Bark is based on Halloween tropes. This holiday was brought to America largely through Irish immigration. As previously mentioned, resurrection is seen throughout this arc, though the only character that seems to portray it in a positive way is Brook. Joyce set his short story The Dead on Usher's Island, sharing the same name as Poe's short story The Fall of the House of Usher. Set at a house party, an unusual amount of detail in this story is given to descriptions of food. They are referred to in military terms such as squadrons, much like the characters of Whole Cake Island. The story ends with the sentence, "His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end, upon all the living and the dead." A zombie is someone who is neither alive nor dead, and a paralyzed state in between, much like the state of those under colonial rule. We may want to keep an eye out for characters from Winter Islands and how this may relate to them. I was curious what would come up if I googled Irish vampire, and googling random aspects of One Piece plus James Joyce or Finnegan's Wake is how I figured much of this out, and I came across the Bertuch, an Irish vampire of sorts. Unlike Moria, the Bertuch is a dwarf, perhaps an ironic twist, or maybe it's nothing more than a coincidence. The west of Ireland currently and continuously has had the highest percentage of Irish speakers since England started imposing their language. The only people who could read the poneglyphs, the people of O'Hara, were from the West Blue. Teaching of this language was harshly punished. As Joyce wrote, "My soul frets in the shadow of his language." O'Hara seems to be a parallel to Western Ireland and the British eradication of the Irish language. There are 4 traditional provinces of Ireland: Munster, Connacht, Leinster, and Ulster. There are also 4 seas in One Piece. To travel west in Ireland is symbolic of both a return to a more quote-unquote true Ireland, like how we would view rural areas in America, but also of a march towards death. After all, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's interesting then that after entering the Grand Line, Luffy actually sails east with the rising sun. Speaking of the sun,
now let's talk about
the sun.
We talk about
the sun.
Please, Mac, I'm dying to talk about
the sun.
You all day, okay?
Shut up about the sun! Shut up about the sun!
sun symbolism, especially as it relates to the dawn, is absolutely everywhere in One Piece. From One Piece's original name, Romance Dawn, to the Thousand Sunny, and to the Sun Pirates, this is one of the most important themes throughout the series. If you want a good overview of the concept, I recommend watching Mr. Morge's video on the subject. He does a great job explaining it. But in a nutshell, the sun or the dawn is the hope of a new era of freedom, free from the darkness, which is frequently represented by the night or the moon. Here we'll take a look at how this concept relates to Joyce and Ireland. Nekomamushi states, "I am the one who waits for the dawn of the world." And here in Finnegan's Wake we see, "Messenger of the risen sun." And throughout this final chapter, there are many references to the dawn and the sun. I think this chapter has to do with trying to wake one of the characters up from a dream. There is a biblical sentiment in this as well, as Jesus is the risen sun, and this connects to all of the other resurrection themes we've seen. But perhaps most interesting of all, innocuously hiding at the bottom of the page, is this sentence: Muta, Pongo de Bonza, and I would uncertain and druidful scatterings, one piece tall chap he stand, one piece same place. I've read a couple of different explanations for this sentence, none of which make a ton of sense in One Piece's context. It's possible Oda is using it in a different way though. Pongo de Bonza could be a reference to Sancho Panza, Don Quixote's somewhat more down-to-earth right-hand man. It can be read as, and I would uncertain or ascertain in druid or dreadful scatterings, one piece tall chap he stand, one piece same place. Druidful scatterings kind of reminds me of Rayleigh. He has a bit of a druidic look to him, and Rayleigh scattering is a physics term involving light dispersing. Rayleigh also fights someone with a light-based devil fruit. There are many tall chaps in One Piece, presumably including a yet unseen one with a large straw hat. Same place. A return to somewhere important, perhaps? Most likely Raftel, but we'll return to this thought. Blackbeard is quite literally the opposite of the sun. He has the power of darkness. Ace wears a sun hat, and the two fight directly. The traditional sun cross is split into 4 parts, with 2 lines intersecting, much like the planet in One Piece. Add a cross to it and you get the Celtic cross. Celtic crosses and sun crosses appear throughout One Piece. The Whitebeard pirate's Jolly Roger is often stylized as something close to a Celtic cross. Kuma's shirt looks like one as well. The world government flag is missing the circular part of the sun cross, making it the opposite of Kuma's. I've also seen explanations that sun crosses can represent the Earth, though I'm not sure what to make of this besides the fact that the planet of One Piece is divided into this essentially. With this in mind, what I find very strange is Von Augur. He has a crescent moon for a hat, and not 1, not 2, but 3 sun crosses in this picture alone, with a couple more on other parts of his gun. It is of course possible Oda just really wanted to represent him with scopes and that this is unrelated to a sun cross. I think it's likely someone will eventually betray Blackbeard like he has betrayed everyone else, plus there's that part in Ulysses with the term Blackbearded Iscariot. Aokiji, if he truly is part of Blackbeard's crew, is definitely not loyal to him, and I'm sure Blackbeard realizes this. The person to betray Blackbeard, I suspect, if it's a singular person, may be Von Augur. The crescent moon on his head is a particularly interesting choice of symbolism. Von Augur's design is based on Adolphus from the film The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, including his great eyesight and speed. Many people have already remarked that a crescent moon could represent a D. We already know that the Minks and the Kozuki clan are related to crescent moon symbolism, both of whom are a force for good. Von Augur's hat also reminds me of a jester's hat, which makes thematic sense when you consider that Usopp, the sniper of the Straw Hats, is the closest analog to a jester on Luffy's crew. Jesters, in literature at least, are often used to tell the king the truth without having to worry about reprisals. They would not be yes men. Usopp, though often a liar, has definitely not been a yes man to Luffy, and it's difficult to say, but perhaps Von Augur acts as a similar counterweight to Blackbeard. There are other jester-type characters in the series, notably Buggy the Clown, as well as Caesar Clown, both of whom oppose Luffy, though perhaps they would be better off being yes men. In Finnegan's Wake, the word clown appears in the same sentence as someone with Von in their name, which denotes Dutch origin. Von Augur's remarks about fate, especially when he's talking to himself, make him feel like a character in a Shakespearean play to me. I'm not actually sure if that's something common in Shakespeare's plays, but it's just what it reminded me of. It's hard to tell considering how little we know about him, but Von Augur has appeared extremely loyal so far. He tried to shoot Ace just for insulting Blackbeard, but Von Augur appears intelligent as well, and may have known it wouldn't harm Ace. He could also just be loyal to Blackbeard right up until the moment he isn't. I have one theory that may not work if Von Augur betrays Blackbeard before they reach Raftel, which we'll also cover in a moment. If anyone else betrays Blackbeard, I think it would have to be either his original crew or Shiryu. Anyone else in it just wouldn't have the same impact. Returning to the theme of the Crescent Moon, it makes an appearance on Mihawk's sword, Zoro's eyecatcher in Wano, and the Muggy Kingdom. A crescent moon looks like a D, but it could also be a C, right next to D in the alphabet. A crescent moon looks like the moon's been cut, and it may be related to sword users. Nekomamashi is a cat, which are nocturnal and starts with the letter C. Rayleigh's first name, Silvers, makes the same sound as a soft C, and is a swordsman. Marineford was a giant C, and looking at Binks's brew, there's a very strong sound in the words. The sea they sail on and the letter C sound the same, and waves make a C symbol. Whitebeard's mustache also looks like a crescent moon, or C as well. Several characters connected to this are either the second strongest in their crew, or as a pirate in ranking, though Mihawk is known as the strongest swordsman, and to break up the swordsman theme, Gold Roger also fought with one. The novel Don Quixote de la Mancha has also had a great impact on Oda's writing. It's an impact that is clearly worn on One Piece's sleeve, with a character being perhaps ironically named after the ingenious Hidalgo, and Gonfal's design is modeled after him as well. The relation between the novel and One Piece could be its own video, but it is important to note that Don Quixote is also important in Joyce's work. In one of his short stories titled Araby, a child tries to go to a fair and buy something for a girl he likes, only to be met with a crushing disappointment of reality when almost every step of his plan goes awry. This conflict between dreams and lived reality pervades Joyce's writing, and obviously One Piece as well. Written around the same time as Don Quixote, Hamlet also plays an important part in Joyce's work, with Stephen Dedalus and Ulysses viewing himself as something of an analog. Hamlet also deals with dreams versus reality to some extent, especially as it relates to death, with Hamlet's famous to be or not to be soliloquy. Helmeppo may be a version of Hamlet in One Piece. Rather than fighting his uncle, however, he fights directly with his father, Axion Morgan. He is definitely aristocratic, and his name is somewhat similar. One thing I found extremely interesting is that post-time skip, both Helmeppo and Don Quixote's eyes are covered. I've linked an article in the description comparing Don Quixote and Hamlet, and the author notes that we are never really privy to what Hamlet or Don Quixote truly see. I think that's why the two in One Piece have their eyes hidden. Additionally, this thread mentions that one of Doflamingo's attacks names could be translated as Hamlet Threads. Unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese, so I can't really pick up on any important Japanese wordplay if it doesn't translate or if someone else hasn't already pointed it out. The song Binks' Sake has a lot in common with Finnegan's Wake. Sake, spelled the same as sake, rhymes with wake. Finnegan's Wake is a song that the book of the same name is based on in a sense, and is set at a funeral with a resurrection and an upbeat tune. I think Binks' sake may have started with people singing it at funerals. The title of Finnegan's Wake has no apostrophe, so this person could just be Bink. Binks or Bink may or may not have been real. People have speculated whether this person could be Joy Boy. Binks also rhymes with Minx, though I'm unsure if that's just a coincidence or not. Wake also means to wake from a dream, as well as the trail a boat leaves behind it, like how much of One Piece lies in the wake of Gold Roger. I've also read theories that Laugh Tale is only accessible at evening or under a full moon because of the lyrics in Binks' sake, and that definitely makes sense. After all, we know that the end lyrics, never ending, ever wandering, our funny traveling tale, relate to the actual name of the island, Laugh Tale. The song Finnegan's Wake contains the lyrics, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake, which sounds like a laugh tale, and it ends with, Thundering Jesus, do you think I'm dead? We've seen a Thundering Jesus in One Piece already that we thought was dead. Could the lyrics, with a dawn, D-O-N, mean, with a dawn, D-A-W-N? Does this mean that the D really is Dawn? Dawn, D-O-N, also denotes a person of importance. It would be strange though because it's already in Don Quixote's name. The lyrics, the birds sing as they draw circles in the sky, stands out to me for a few reasons. What if they are related to finding or gaining access to Raftel somehow? A seagull commonly represents a deceased sailor's soul. Chopper can talk to animals, and Luffy can sometimes understand them as well. A few people have already pointed out that augury is the practice of divining fate from birds, much like Von Augur seems to do. Perhaps he is able to use this ability to help Blackbeard access Laugh Tale. The first introduction to Luffy we see has seagulls flying overhead, and the first real introduction to the Blackbeard pirates shows Von Augur shooting a seagull. Sengoku also has a seagull on his hat. As for Beat Upon the Drums, Chopper is from Drum Island, and we know Blackbeard visited there for some reason. There must be more to it though. Joy Boy Theories made a great video explaining some of the Buddhist influences present in Zoro, especially as they are connected to his attacks, and I think this is very interesting in how it relates to Joyce. I haven't come across anything particularly interesting in Joyce's connection to Buddhism directly. It is present in his work, but not to the extent that it seems to be in One Piece. The strongest connection appears to be the themes of recirculation, resurrection, and reincarnation. Oda has certainly picked up on it. I think Zoro always falling asleep, as well as getting lost, are related to Buddhist principles. Sleeping can be viewed as a form of meditation or connecting to a higher plane of existence, and Zoro getting lost sounds similar to the Buddhist concept of aimlessness. I think Zoro is essentially in a higher mental state in these moments, and I don't think it would be extremely irrational to suggest that Zoro may possess an especially powerful or a unique form of observation haki. We've seen his acute senses in the past. He initially distrusted Robin, for example. I think, ironically, Zoro's wandering may actually be related to finding the One Piece, or something else of great importance. I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but we'll cover that a bit later. Osiris, first of the Westerners, Lord at the top of the staircase. According to this analysis, Osiris in Finnegan's Wake is known as the Lord at the top of the staircase. People have speculated that Eam has some Egyptian inspiration or influence because of him not slashing Vivi's wanted poster. I think Eam may be an amalgamation of influences, but this could be one of them and likely even the largest of them. Osiris was apparently resurrected, fitting the theme in One Piece. Isis sought Osiris, apparently in bird form, possibly an eagle, but possibly a goose or a hen. Could Vivi be Isis? 2 eyes and 2 consonants? This explanation also notes the presence of the 4 genii, who sound similar to the Gorosei, and how Finnegan's Wake is similar to the Egyptian Book of the Dead and moving into the light. Light destroys those without shadows. Could it destroy Eam? If Eam has been alive since the Void Century, then that could connect to the tune Finnegan's Wake. We talked about how the last line was, Thundering Jesus, do you think I'm dead? And how Enel, a Thundering Jesus, was thought to be dead. I'm willing to bet there's some parallel to Eam here. Either Eam is thought to be dead or forgotten, or through some devil fruit shenanigans is not what we would typically call alive. Eam may be trying to resurrect himself. One of the goals of One Piece may be to send Eam to the afterlife, echoing the Book of the Dead. Maybe all of One Piece can be summarized by this scene. Boa Hancock's snake symbolism could be connected to the Ouroboros, a symbol of a snake eating its own tail, thus creating a recirculation. Marco has a phoenix devil fruit, famously known for their own resurrection. It's also ironic that Hancock lives on an island of snakes, whereas snakes were driven out of Ireland by St. Patrick, who was also a slave, and his associated colors are green and white. Rayleigh saved Hancock and her sisters from slavery, driving them out of Mayo. The Ouroboros is also an important symbol in alchemy as well. An alchemist called Cleopatra, not the super famous one, but a different one, created certain alchemy symbols, one of them being an Ouroboros. Jungian psychologist Eric Newman stated that the Ouroboros represents the ego in a pre-dawn state. On the topic of Jung, there is a Jungian term called the Great Mother. I'm not too familiar with this, but apparently it involves the psychology of children and how they feel both protected by their mothers, but dependent on and vulnerable to them as well. This is very reminiscent of Big Mom. Jung wrote to Joyce that he was both frustrated by and interested in his novel Ulysses. Jung also treated Joyce's daughter for schizophrenia, so there's a connection there too. Oda has stated that the animated cartoon he watched as a child, Vicky the Viking, was very influential to him. It's also worth noting that Vikings founded Dublin, and there are many Norse and Viking references in Joyce's work. In Gulliver's Travels, written by Irish author Jonathan Swift, which is also referenced in Finnegan's Wake, there are people the size of the Tontatas called Lilliputians who are they're kind of dumb. They're shallow and petty, though the Tontatas are a bit nicer compared to them. There's giants too, and the giants are portrayed as noble beings, so that we are to the giants as the Lilliputians are to us. It seems similar in One Piece, with the giants being associated with a certain kind of nobleness. There also exists a floating island in the sky and talking animals in Gulliver's Travels. The animals were also fairly noble, kind of like the Minx. This website is worth looking over. It connects Joyce directly to Japan. According to Eiichiro Ito, Joyce said that there are 4 terrible things in Japan: Jishin or earthquakes, Kaminari or thunder, Kaji or fire, and Oyaji or paternity. 3 of these make for strong devil fruits, though they would probably be strong even if Oda wasn't influenced by this. As for paternity, we are still waiting to see what the deal is with Whitebeard's supposed son, who looks like he could be quite terrible indeed. So-called thunder words are important parts of Finnegan's Wake. Thunder words are giant words made up of words from different languages smashed together, imitating the word or sound of thunder. The first Japanese word to appear is Kaminari, meaning thunder. I think there's more symbolic significance to Enel than meets the eye. People have speculated that the Skypiea arc seems like a condensed version of One Piece, from fighting God to searching for treasure. Thunder words represent the only thing that can be heard from outside the dream in Finnegan's Wake. They are the one solid bit of reality. I'm not entirely sure what this would mean in One Piece's context, but maybe it reflects how Enel is trying to destroy Luffy's dreams. The millennium since the Void Century can be seen as a nightmare, so maybe Enel's power will actually be instrumental in ushering in the dawn somehow. It's interesting that the name of Enel's devil fruit, the Goro Goro no Mi, represents specifically the sound of thunder. It could have been lightning, or electricity, or just thunder itself, but no, it's the sound of thunder, just like thunder words in Finnegan's Wake. We could view the celestial dragons in a similar way. They live high up like thunder gods, are composed of people originally from different kingdoms, similar to different languages, and are trying to destroy dreams. Perhaps this relates to Uranus, the ancient weapon related to the sky in some way. Dragon saved Luffy with a lightning bolt, further complicating how we are supposed to view the role of lightning in One Piece. Some have speculated that Joy Boy is based on the king Joyo Boyo, and that is perfectly possible. It's also possible that his first name is partly derived from the first 3 letters of Joyce. The boy part could be a reference to the nuclear bomb dropped on Japan, dubbed Little Boy. If Joy Boy's goal was to destroy Marie-Joie, then this would make some sense. The term Joy Boy is found in Finnegan's Wake, and the notes say Joy Boy is slang for someone who's homosexual. Maybe Joy Boy was the first Okama. Ivankov and Bon Clay call Luffy Boy a lot, and are the only ones who seem to do so, that I can remember at least. Animals play an important role in One Piece. There are talking animals, an entire category of animal transformation devil fruits exist. One creature that is very important in Finnegan's Wake is the beetle. This webpage gives a good summary. Essentially, the beetle relates to the Book of the Dead, thus relating it to Finnegan's Wake, and is also related to the sun and Aesop's fables. There are quite a few examples of beetle imagery in One Piece, and one in particular that is connected to Aesop, or as he's called in One Piece, Usopp. Usopp's weapon is called Kabuto, and his trainer in the time skip is based on a beetle. On page 480, we see the words Dragon Vice Father. According to the notes, vice in this context represents someone who acts in place of another. Many characters act as vice fathers to Luffy, such as Shanks and Garp. On initial reading, it almost sounds like Dragon isn't Luffy's real father, he's only a stand-in. I think this is meant in more of a metaphorical sense in One Piece though, as Dragon played almost no part in raising Luffy. There's also the line, "Here is Vice King's grab," which sounds a bit like Garp. Vice King also sounds like Viking, so there could be some sort of interaction in these lines between Vikings and possibly giants, Dragon, Luffy, Garp, and a Vice King, which is someone who is standing in for a king. Garp remains a Vice Admiral, which further links Garp to this line. Are Eam or the Fleet Admiral Vice Kings? They certainly don't seem to be Vikings. Technically, a Vice Admiral could be a Vice King, since they are acting in place of the ruling power. According to the annotations, "Here is Vice King's garb" could also mean "Here is Vikings" or Vice King's grave. There are numerous references to gold, silver, and bronze in Ulysses, especially in the Sirens chapter, referring to a couple of barmaids. I think gold and silver are very important themes in One Piece, representing the sun and the moon, and Gold Roger and Silver's Rayleigh. If Shaki is connected to Silver's Rayleigh, then I wonder if Makino is connected to Gold Roger. The significance of Gold Roger and Silver's Rayleigh's names in One Piece could be related to alchemy. There are many references to alchemy in Joyce's writing, and alchemy is also an esoteric body of work shrouded in mystery. It lends itself well to One Piece's storyline in that way. We've already seen someone turn lead into something else. In fact, this may be extremely significant. The holy grail of alchemy is the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, generally depicted as a small red rock that can grant immortality and change anything into gold and silver. Law's Devil Fruit is small, red, and can grant immortality. Is it the Philosopher's Stone? It could also just be related to creating the Philosopher's Stone. What if that's what the One Piece is? It would be a fitting reward for such an adventure. Kid's arm resembles Edward Elric a bit now, since it's made of metal, and his right-hand man has his face generally covered. It is also possible that the treasure in Marie-Joie that Doflamingo spoke about is related to creating the Philosopher's Stone. I think that some other characters could be related as well. The Philosopher's Stone was frequently called many other names. One such one was Crocus, who is a doctor, and it seems like someone with medical skills is needed to bring out the full power of the fruit, though from what we know, Crocus couldn't have actually had the Ope Ope no Mi. Another name it was called was Cerberus. If you remember from Harry Potter, a Cerberus guarded the stone. There is a theory that Blackbeard has a Cerberus devil fruit, and that's how he can absorb more than one devil fruit at once. I don't think that's exactly right, but I'm fairly certain that the abstract concept of Cerberus is related. His Jolly Roger does have 3 skulls on it. The primary ingredient in making a Philosopher's Stone, called Prima Materia, is said to be created from chaos. Blackbeard is the clearest example of chaos as a character in One Piece, and there was a reason he needed his specific devil fruit so badly. We haven't seen Blackbeard interested in Law's devil fruit yet, but we do know he is gathering fruits. Devil fruits seem like a kind of limited alchemy, and awakened fruits let the user turn their surroundings into the power of their fruit. Maybe all of this is related to Blackbeard trying to perform some kind of alchemy. I do wonder what Law's awakened devil fruit would be like. Doflamingo said it's the strongest devil fruit, seemingly implying this was due to the personality transplant or immortality powers. What if when awakened, his fruit could perform perfect alchemy like every other devil fruit awakening at once? Speaking of personality transplants, my friend suggested this next idea. Alchemy is turning lesser substances into gold or silver, but theoretically it should be able to turn gold or silver into other substances as well. Could Gold Roger or Silver's Rayleigh have had their personality transplanted? It seems kind of unlikely to me given their character, but my friend also brought up the scene where Zoro absorbs Luffy's pain from Kuma. If Rayleigh switched places with Gold Roger and died for him, it would parallel this scene perfectly, but I don't think it would make much sense outside of it. Gold Roger doesn't seem like he would want to be anyone else. Rayleigh's personality is also very different, though I wonder if prolonged personality transplants could be similar to the way Moria's shadows work, with the soul or shadow adapting to the body. That would kind of defeat the purpose of transplanting a personality though. I doubt Oda would introduce this ability for no reason, however, and we should expect it to be highly plot relevant at some point. One last note about the Sirens chapter in Ulysses, there's a reference to a Rose of Castile, Castile being Spain and Dressrosa being largely based on Spain. There may be a connection there. Characters in Finnegan's Wake sort of meld into different ones, like in How a Dream you can talk to someone and suddenly they are someone else, though possibly connected through something. That could be why so many characters in One Piece seem to be based on real-world people. Sabo may be that for Ace, And there is of course the whole theme of inherited will and reincarnation, but Sabo could also be a dream transformation of Ace. There may not even be a real distinction between reincarnating and dream transformations. Yamato claims to be Kozuki Odin in a similar manner. The voice of all things in One Piece is essentially the language I would say Finnegan's Wake is written in, because it combines so many languages. It seems like only certain people can even hear, let alone understand or control it in One Piece. This could be related to Thunder words as well, since they represent every language. It seems like hearing the voices of all things can be uncomfortable, a bit like being woken from a dream. Something about the Golden Bell strikes me as being extremely important in this regard, but I can't quite put my finger on it. In addition to Bellamy and Bellemere potentially having their names derived from Anne Olivia Pluribel, who is in turn based on the River Liffey, it's possible the Golden Bell is derived from Pluribel as well. This article from One Piece Podcasts notes some of the Joycean epiphanies present in One Piece. A Joycean epiphany is a sudden moment of intense emotion or revelation common in many of his works, especially in Dubliners. Oda's version of this consists of short moments, often single manga panels, that become a singularity representing a character's inner turmoil and feelings. Nami asking Luffy for help, Robin screaming out she wants to live, and so on. Much of One Piece's art style facilitates strong emotional responses, with over-exaggerated features being a staple of Oda's. Black holes are believed to have a singularity at their center, so maybe Blackbeard is a never-ending epiphany. He is a strong believer in fate, and once someone enters a black hole, their fate is sealed. I'm sure that whenever the Straw Hats find the One Piece, there will be a defining Joycean epiphany. Von Augur, Blackbeard, and Burgess may be based on characters from Ulysses. Von Augur seems the clearest. He is intelligent, quiet, dignified, and practices augury with his gun. Stephen Dedalus shares those traits as well, but views his walking stick as an augury rod instead. Stephen's pseudo-friend Buck Mulligan is more athletic than Stephen, and is notably a good swimmer. He seems to parallel Jesus Burgess a bit. Blackbeard has some similarities with Leopold Bloom. They both really like food, both believe in fate, and pre-time skip they were both 38 years old. Bloom is empathetic, and it's possible that this is why Blackbeard is so sensitive when he gets hit. The end of Chapter 9 in Ulysses combines all of these elements at once. We see a reference to augury, Buck Mulligan, and Leopold Bloom, who is called a Wandering Jew by Mulligan. The Wandering Jew legend states that a Jewish person was sentenced to wander the earth for mocking Jesus or sinning against the light, and Blackbeard has the darkness devil fruit. This sounds similar to Zanisha's fate as well. This also ties Blackbeard to Judas and betrayal. So now I'm wondering how this could relate to Blackbeard's backstory. Why did he seem so sad as a child? Was he persecuted in some way? His design as a child looks similar to Hody Jones, whose arc dealt extensively with racism and prejudice. Blackbeard can sort of be viewed as a wanderer. He drifted from the ice island he was presumably born on, to where Whitebeard picked him up, and then the pirate crew drifted around. I think this connection is a little tenuous, but strengthened by this. A chapter of Ulysses is titled Wandering Rocks. Since Blackbeard seems to be influenced by Rox D. Zebek, perhaps Rox is also related to the Wandering Jew story. It's hard to say definitively when we know so little about Blackbeard and Rox. Irish author Samuel Beckett assisted Joyce, and it seems that his character named Lucky from Waiting for Godot is Doc Q's inspiration. Considering the name connection, there may be a connection between Lucky Roo and Doc Q. I have no idea about Lafitte at the moment. He kind of reminds me of Alex from A Clockwork Orange. The author's last name is Burgess. He wrote about Joyce, and Lafitte's wide open eyes remind me of the scene where Alex's eyes are forced open, though I think, as others have noted, he bears more similarity to Marilyn Manson. What's interesting is that, like with Sanji and Big Mom, Oda seems to be making characters that are both positive and negative versions of Joycean characters. Shanks is a positive rendition of the empathetic Bloom. Frankie or Jinbei could be more positive versions of Buck Mulligan, as they are both physically robust and great swimmers. And Robin or Law could be good versions of Steven, since the two of them are both intelligent and reserved, and Law's sword is long like Augur's gun or Steven's stick. It's kind of interesting that Usopp doesn't really seem to parallel Steven, making him the positive version to Von Augur's negativity, or maybe he does and I haven't figured out how yet. Leopold Bloom's wife, Molly Bloom, is tied to themes of sexuality in Ulysses, drawing comparisons to Nami, and honestly, most female characters in One Piece. Many have noted the similarities between Kaido and Genghis Khan. In Finnegan's Wake, Genghis is swapped with Guinness, the beer, so this could be why Kaido is an alcoholic. I think the Joyce inspiration is also the reason there's so much early 1900s inspiration in One Piece, such as the Mafia or Flappers, since that was when Joyce wrote. In A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Joyce writes that Stephen drew forth a phrase from his treasure and spoke it softly to himself, a day of dappled seaborne clouds. This suggests that part of the One Piece may either be something of personal value to Gold Roger or Joy Boy, or something based on words or a story. I know Oda has stated that the One Piece would be something tangible, so this may be related, but I'm sure there will be something more corporeal present as well. People are still scouring Finnegan's Wake for its treasures, and the One Piece remains equally elusive. If I had to guess, I would say that the One Piece is a combination of an actual pirate treasure, some sort of story or words, probably the story of the world written on poneglyphs, and possibly one more X factor, likely related to alchemy or the Philosopher's Stone. Whatever is on Laugh Tale is supposed to turn the world on its head, so I guess that could be anything, but considering Buggy, who loves treasure, doesn't seem particularly eager to reach it, I'm guessing it's some sort of information. With the prevalence of resurrection and recirculation themes throughout One Piece, I think it's likely there will be another major example of this, either by the Ope Ope fruit mentioned previously, if the fruit can even do that, or through some other means. Let's take a look at the beginning of Finnegan's Wake again. River Run, past Even Adams, from Swerve of Shore to Bend of Bay, brings us by a commodious ficus of recirculation back to Hoth Castle and environs. Swerve of Shore to Bend of Bay, SB. Sabaody, perhaps? If Marijois is Hoth Castle or Marineford, then Sabaody is within its environs, as a suspiciously large amount of time is dedicated to pointing out that Sabaody is very close to Marijois and Marineford. It's also possible Oda could be going the Don Quixote route and viewing every inn or bar as a castle, in which case Hoth Castle could be Shaki's bar. The crew has already recirculated to Sabaody once, and I think they will again. When the Straw Hats arrive at Raftel, in order to get to Sabaody, they will have to go back past Fishman Island and the place where the Sunny used to be docked at Sabaody. The Eve Tree is located at Fishman Island, and the Sunny is made of wood from the Atom Tree, past Eve and Adam. Why is Rayleigh on the island? Why can he coat ships? The grove numbers make convenient markings. Perhaps there is something located at the bottom of Sabaody? In a tree perhaps? Much like how Gold Roger's son Ace hid his treasure in a tree, along with his friend Sabo, whose name is in Sabaody? The Atom Tree is even called a treasure tree. Is it connected to the sentence in Finnegan's Wake that possibly alludes to Rayleigh scattering, mentions One Piece twice and same place? There's also the sentence in Finnegan's Wake that contains Groove 2, perhaps meaning Grove 2? Tall Chap could refer to the height of the tree, and Zoro, possibly as a result of his Buddhist influence that we talked about earlier, wanders into Grove 2, and it isn't even shown what grove it is until Oda purposely makes him mention it later. In the manga, it's immediately shown that Zoro is in Grove 2, so the seemingly unimportant grove number remains in both versions. I think Zoro's wandering is a pull from a higher level of existence. He is also the second-ranked Straw Hat, and Oda has officially stated that his number is 2. If Pongo de Bonza means Sancho Panza, then Zoro or Rayleigh could be seen as the Sanchos to their captains Don Quixotes. Here's a bit of a counter-argument to this idea though. In chapter 967 it seems pretty clear that the One Piece is in fact on Raftel. Past Even Adam could just mean past Fishman Island into the New World, and then past Adam, which may be the Oro Jackson. Perhaps lurking under Sabaody lies the Final Road poneglyph, or it's related to an ancient weapon. A bit unrelated, but Raftel is in the part of the Grand Line in the New World. The New World is important in Ireland's history because of the large amount of immigration from Ireland to the Americas, which Joyce was well aware of. So there you have it. One Piece is a spiritual reinterpretation of Finnegan's Wake. Something important may be below Grove 2 on Sabaody, and Don Krieg is going to be king of the pirates. Making this video was something special. Every time I thought I was finished, I realized another connection, and then connections unrelated to Joyce, which I plan on making other videos about. I guess you could say the Joyce connections were just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure there are many more connections that I missed and people will discover over time. There's so much more I could have talked about or researched, but I had to draw the line somewhere. When I actually began to watch One Piece, I immediately knew it was something special. The sprawling, fully realized world, the plot points that always seem to perfectly connect, everything in it is just so iconic. I've seen memes where One Piece is derided as not being a serious or mature work, and it makes me laugh. I challenge you to find a manga author that has a better grasp on and incorporation of one of the most opaque books ever written, because you won't find one. Eiichiro Oda is seriously incredible, being able to create a series that has both mass appeal and such hidden depth. There's a reason people have stuck with One Piece for the entirety of this millennium, and that's because of its quality. Thanks for watching.